The hotel lobby was full of shining lights, glass walls, and the soft sound of piano music playing in the background. Guests walked in and out, dragging expensive suitcases, wearing neat clothes, and smelling of perfumes that filled the air. Behind the large reception desk stood a young woman. She was smartly dressed, her uniform pressed perfectly, and her smile only appeared when she saw rich-looking customers. For others, her eyes turned cold. She believed this hotel was not for ordinary people. It was for the wealthy, the powerful, and the important. At that very moment, the lobby doors slowly opened. A man walked in. His clothes were plain, a little dusty as if he had traveled a long way. He carried only a small bag, the kind of bag that did not belong in a place like this. His shoes were old, and his hair was slightly messy. To anyone else, he looked like someone who did not belong in such a luxurious environment. But his eyes were calm, and his steps were confident. The receptionist noticed him immediately. Her smile disappeared. She frowned, then leaned forward on the desk, waiting to hear what this strange guest would ask. The man walked toward the desk slowly, with a polite smile on his face. The people sitting nearby on the lobby chairs also looked at him, some curious, some judgmental. "Good evening," the man said softly. His voice was calm, almost warm. "I would like a room, please." The receptionist stared at him for a few seconds. She scanned his clothes from top to bottom, her eyes filled with silent judgment. Then she laughed a little under her breath. "A room," she repeated, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Sir, maybe you are in the wrong place. This is a 5-star hotel." The man kept smiling. "Yes, I know," he answered gently. "That's why I came here. I need a quiet room for the night." The receptionist shook her head and forced a smile that looked more like an insult. "Do you even know the price of staying here? Rooms are not cheap. This is not the kind of place where people like you come." Her voice was sharp, each word chosen to hurt. The stranger did not react. He only looked at her calmly, as if her words did not affect him. He placed his small bag beside his feet and said softly, "I can manage. Can you please check if there is a room available?" Her patience ended. She sighed loudly, leaned back in her chair, and whispered to her colleague sitting nearby, loud enough for the man to hear. "Unbelievable. Some people think they can just walk into luxury and demand service. Look at him. He doesn't even look like he can pay for a cup of tea here." The colleague laughed quietly. The receptionist turned back to the man and said coldly, "I'm sorry, sir, but we are fully booked. Maybe you can find a cheaper motel down the street. It will suit you better." The man nodded slowly, as if he expected this answer. But there was no anger in his face, no frustration. Instead, his smile grew a little, almost as if he knew something that nobody else knew. "Thank you," he said politely, picking up his bag again. "I will try somewhere else." He turned and began to walk away. People in the lobby whispered among themselves. Some shook their heads, agreeing with the receptionist. Others felt uneasy, wondering if the man was truly as poor as he looked. There was something strange about the way he walked, calm, steady, confident. The receptionist, however, felt proud of herself. She had done her duty, she thought. She had protected the image of the hotel by not letting the wrong type of guest inside. She smiled to herself, already forgetting about the stranger. But one old staff member, a bellboy who had worked at the hotel for many years, watched the man carefully as he left. He noticed the confidence in the stranger's steps, the sharpness in his eyes. Something about him did not fit the image of a poor traveler. The bellboy whispered under his breath, "Appearances can lie." Outside the glass doors, the stranger stopped for a moment. He looked back at the shining lobby, at the receptionist who had insulted him, and then at the guests who were still staring. He gave a small smile, almost invisible, and walked out into the night. The sound of his footsteps faded away, but the quiet tension he left behind stayed in the air. Something about this man felt different, mysterious. He was not just another stranger who could not afford a room. He was something more. But for now, nobody in the hotel knew the truth. The receptionist turned to her colleague and laughed. "Did you see his face? Poor man thought he could stay here. Some people don't know their limits." The colleague nodded, both of them completely unaware of the storm that was about to come. Because the man they had insulted was no ordinary traveler. He was someone who could change everything. He was someone who held power they could not even imagine. And soon, they would find out the truth, when it was too late. The night grew quiet outside, but inside the hotel, a silent story had already begun. The stranger had arrived, and with him, fate had entered the building. The next morning the hotel lobby was bright again. The glass walls reflected sunlight, the sound of expensive shoes echoed on the marble floor, and the receptionist sat proudly at her desk. She still remembered the stranger from last night. In her mind, it was a funny memory, how someone with such poor appearance dared to ask for a room in this hotel. She thought about it again and smiled to herself. She leaned toward her colleague and whispered, "Can you believe it? That man actually thought he could stay here. Dusty clothes, cheap shoes. He probably didn't even have enough for the bus fare." Her colleague laughed softly, agreeing. "Some people just don't understand their place," he said. But not everyone in the lobby agreed. The old bellboy, who had seen everything the night before, stood quietly near the elevator. He didn't laugh. He remembered the stranger's calm eyes and steady walk. He had worked in this hotel long enough to know that true power never needed to show off. He whispered to himself, "Be careful who you insult." Meanwhile, the receptionist returned to her work. A group of wealthy guests entered the lobby. Their clothes were sharp, their perfume filled the air, and their credit cards shone like gold. The receptionist's attitude immediately changed. Her fake smile appeared again, bright and welcoming. She greeted them with sweet words, bending every rule to make them comfortable. But while she was busy flattering them, the glass doors opened once more. To her surprise, the same stranger from last night stepped inside. His clothes were still plain, his small bag in his hand. He looked exactly the same, as if he had not changed at all since yesterday. The receptionist froze for a second, her smile disappearing. Then her eyes filled with annoyance. She whispered under her breath, "Not again." The stranger walked toward the desk, calm and polite, just like before. Guests nearby noticed him and began to whisper. Some looked at him with pity, others with judgment. Why would someone like him return to such a hotel? When he reached the desk, he gave a small nod and said softly, "Good morning. I would like to ask again if you have a room available today." The receptionist's mouth opened in disbelief. She stared at him as if he had asked for the impossible. "Are you serious?" she snapped. "I told you last night. This hotel is not for you." The stranger did not look upset. His calm smile remained. "I thought maybe today would be different," he said gently. Her voice grew louder. "Do you think this is some kind of joke? Rooms here are more expensive than your entire life. Guests here are important people, businessmen, celebrities, royalty. And then there is you, standing here with your old shoes and dirty bag, asking for a luxury suite." Guests in the lobby turned their heads. Some of them shook their heads in disapproval, while others smirked, entertained by the drama. The receptionist's words were sharp, cutting through the air like knives. The man only bowed his head slightly. "I understand," he said quietly. But the receptionist was not finished. She wanted to humiliate him fully, to show everyone that she was right. "Listen carefully," she said loudly so that everyone could hear. "This hotel has a reputation. We cannot allow people who don't belong here to spoil our image. If you want a bed, find a cheap motel at the corner. That is where you belong." Her colleague giggled, trying to hide his laughter behind his hand. Even some of the wealthy guests smiled cruelly, enjoying the scene. But then something strange happened. Instead of looking defeated, the stranger smiled more warmly than before. His eyes sparkled with something hidden, something mysterious. He looked at the receptionist and said in a calm, almost kind tone, "One day, you may regret these words." The receptionist laughed loudly, not taking him seriously. "Regret? Me? Don't make me laugh. You should regret wasting my time. Now please leave before I call security." The stranger gave a small bow, picked up his bag, and slowly walked toward the exit. His steps were as steady as before, his shoulders straight. He did not look like a man who had been crushed by insults. Instead, he looked like a man who had decided to wait for the right moment. The old bellboy watched silently from the corner. He felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about this man's calmness that made him uneasy. He whispered again, "Appearances can lie. You should not have spoken to him that way." But the receptionist only laughed, proud of herself. "I saved this hotel's reputation," she said loudly, patting her desk as if it were her throne. The stranger disappeared through the glass doors once again, leaving behind whispers, laughter, and confusion. The receptionist thought she had won. She thought she had humiliated him so badly that he would never return. But deep inside the silence of the hotel, a story was already unfolding. The man she had insulted was no ordinary guest. He carried a secret bigger than anyone in the lobby could imagine. And soon, the very people who laughed at him would be the ones standing in shock. The insult had been made. The lesson, however, was still waiting. The sun was setting, and golden light filled the hotel lobby. Guests walked in and out, carrying designer bags, while the soft sound of a fountain echoed in the background. The receptionist sat proudly at her desk, still enjoying the memory of how she had insulted the stranger twice. For her, it was proof that she could protect the hotel's image. She felt powerful, as if she was the gatekeeper of luxury. Her colleague leaned closer and said with a laugh, "That man had some nerve. Coming back again, asking for a room. I don't know whether to call him brave or foolish." The receptionist smirked. "Foolish, of course. He doesn't know his place. People like him should never step into places like this. I did the right thing by sending him away." But the old bellboy, who had been listening quietly from the corner, finally spoke. His voice was low, but his words carried weight. "Be careful," he said. "Not everyone is what they seem. Sometimes the richest people wear the simplest clothes. And sometimes the poorest-looking man is the one with the most power." The receptionist rolled her eyes and laughed. "Oh, please. That man. Did you see his bag? His shoes? His hair? He looked like he hadn't even seen a mirror in days. Do you really think someone like him could ever be rich?" The bellboy didn't laugh. He looked serious. "I have worked here for more than 20 years. I have seen princes arrive in simple cars, and millionaires wear old clothes just to see how they are treated. This world is not as simple as you think." The receptionist waved her hand dismissively. "That may be true for stories, but not here. I know who belongs and who doesn't." But even as she said the words, something about the stranger's calm smile returned to her mind. His eyes, steady and confident, made her feel a little uneasy. She pushed the thought away and returned to her paperwork. That night, as the lobby grew quieter, a small group of guests sat nearby, whispering about what had happened earlier. "Did you see that man?" one of them asked. The way he walked out, even after being insulted, he didn't look defeated. He looked powerful. Another guest nodded. "Yes, I noticed it too. It was almost as if he let her insult him on purpose. Strange." The receptionist overheard them and grew annoyed. "You're giving him too much importance. He was nobody. Just a poor traveler pretending to be confident. Don't waste your time thinking about him." But the whispers did not stop. Even some of the staff began to talk about the stranger in the back corridors. They remembered the sharpness in his eyes, the way he didn't fight back, and the mysterious smile he left behind. For some reason, people could not forget him. Later that evening, when the receptionist was about to leave her shift, the old bellboy approached her again. His voice was calm but firm. "Listen to me," he said. "When you insult someone, you take a risk. You never know who they really are. Maybe he was just a poor traveler. Or maybe he was testing you. Maybe he came here for a reason you don't understand." The receptionist laughed again, though this time her laugh sounded a little forced. "Testing me? That's ridiculous. Why would anyone test me?" The bellboy looked at her with sad eyes. "Because sometimes people with true power like to see the truth. And the truth comes out when we think we are speaking to someone below us. You showed him your heart today. Are you sure you are proud of it?" His words made her pause for just a second, but she quickly brushed the feeling away. "I don't need lessons from you. I know what I'm doing," she said coldly. The bellboy shook his head and walked away, whispering to himself, "One day, you will understand. But by then, it may be too late." Outside the hotel, the stranger sat quietly in a dark car parked on the street. The driver asked softly, "Sir, shall we leave?" The man looked at the shining building for a long moment. His eyes were calm, but inside them was a fire of determination. "Not yet," he said. "They still don't know who I am. But soon, they will." The car engine started, and the vehicle disappeared into the night. Back inside the hotel, the receptionist stood in the empty lobby, finally alone. She looked at the glass doors without realizing why. Something about the day felt unusual, like the beginning of something bigger. But she shook her head, convinced she had done nothing wrong. What she didn't know was that the whispers about the stranger were already spreading, not just among the staff but among the guests as well. And soon, those whispers would turn into shock when the truth finally came out. For now, the hotel remained silent, glowing under its golden lights. But in the shadows, a secret was waiting to be revealed. The stranger was no ordinary man. He was the storm they could not see yet, and his arrival had only just begun. The next day began like any other. The hotel lobby was alive with movement, guests rushing to meetings, families checking in for vacations, and staff moving quickly to serve them. The receptionist stood at her desk with her usual polished smile, speaking sweetly to every rich-looking guest. In her mind, the memory of the stranger was fading. To her, he was nothing more than a joke, a story she could tell her friends later. But that morning, the atmosphere in the hotel felt different. The staff noticed it first. Security guards whispered into radios, managers walked quickly with nervous faces, and even the bellboys polished the floor with extra care. Something unusual was happening. The receptionist noticed the tension. She frowned and asked one of her colleagues, "What's going on? Why does everyone look so serious?" Her colleague lowered his voice. "We've been told to prepare for a very important guest. Someone extremely powerful is coming today." The general manager himself gave the order. Her eyes lit up. Important guest. Who? A celebrity? A prince? A politician? He shook his head. "Nobody knows yet. But we were told to treat this guest with the highest respect. No mistakes allowed." Excitement filled the receptionist's heart. This was her chance to prove she was the best employee in the hotel. She quickly fixed her makeup, adjusted her uniform, and practiced her sweetest smile in the reflection of the glass counter. "Whoever it is," she whispered, "they will only want to speak to me." Around noon, the lobby grew silent. The main doors opened, and several luxury cars rolled into the driveway. Shiny black vehicles with tinted windows lined up outside, guarded by men in dark suits. Guests inside the lobby turned to watch, their conversations stopping in mid-sentence. The receptionist's heart began to race. She straightened her back and placed both hands neatly on the desk, preparing herself. The first car door opened. A driver stepped out, then another. They scanned the area carefully, as if protecting someone very important. The tension grew thicker. Everyone expected a king, a movie star, or maybe a billionaire businessman. And then, from the second car, a figure stepped out. The receptionist gasped, her mouth opening in shock. The guests nearby froze. It was him. The same stranger she had insulted twice. The same man she had called poor, worthless, and out of place. But this time, he was not wearing dusty clothes. He wore a perfectly tailored suit, sharp and elegant. His shoes shone like polished glass, and on his wrist was a watch that cost more than the hotel staff's yearly salary. His presence filled the entire lobby like a storm. The receptionist's smile died instantly. Her face turned pale. "No, it can't be," she whispered under her breath. The man walked inside slowly, his steps confident and steady, just as before. But now, every eye in the room looked at him with respect, even fear. His simple bag was gone. Instead, two assistants followed behind him, carrying documents and a leather briefcase. The general manager rushed forward, bowing slightly. "Sir, welcome. We are honored to finally meet you." The receptionist's heart dropped. She looked at her colleague, who stared back at her with wide eyes. None of them understood what was happening. The man glanced around the lobby, his calm smile returning. He looked at the receptionist for just a moment, his eyes sharp but unreadable. Then he turned to the general manager and said in a soft, commanding voice, "Shall we begin?" Whispers spread like fire across the lobby. Guests leaned toward each other, asking in hushed voices, "Who is he? Why is the manager treating him like royalty?" Finally, the general manager raised his hands and spoke loudly to the staff. "Attention, everyone. This man is not just our guest. He is the new owner of this hotel." Gasps filled the air. The receptionist felt her knees weaken. She gripped the desk for support, her eyes wide with disbelief. The man she had insulted, mocked, and humiliated was the hidden millionaire, the very person who now held power over all of them. The stranger, now revealed as the owner, turned his calm gaze toward the staff. "I came here quietly, in simple clothes, to see how I would be treated," he said. His voice was soft, but it carried across the silent lobby. Hospitality is not about money or appearance. It is about respect. The receptionist's heart pounded in her chest. His words cut through her like a blade. Her face turned red with shame as the memory of her insults replayed in her mind. She wanted to disappear, to hide from the truth. But the man's eyes remained steady on her for only a moment before he turned away. "Now," he said to the manager, "let us discuss the future of this hotel." The staff followed him with awe. The guests whispered in amazement. But the receptionist stood frozen, her pride shattered, her arrogance exposed. The truth had begun to unfold, and she realized she was standing at the center of it. The revelation had only just begun. The lobby was silent, as if time itself had stopped. The words of the general manager still echoed in everyone's ears. "This man is not just our guest. He is the new owner of this hotel." Every guest, every staff member, even the security guards stood frozen. Eyes widened, mouths half open, hearts beating faster. The stranger, once mocked and humiliated, was now standing tall as the most powerful person in the building. The receptionist's hands trembled on the desk. Her face had lost all color. She wanted to believe it was a mistake, a bad dream, but the truth was in front of her. The man she had rejected and insulted twice was not a beggar, not a fool. He was the hidden millionaire. The stranger, now the owner, looked around calmly. His eyes carried no anger, but they held a weight that pressed down on the people who had judged him. His voice was soft yet sharp when he finally spoke. "I came here like any other guest," he said. "I asked politely for a room. Not once, but twice. And how was I treated? With laughter. With disrespect. With arrogance." His words cut through the silence, hitting the receptionist like heavy stones. She lowered her head, unable to meet his gaze. The owner continued, "Hospitality is not about gold cards or designer clothes. It is about dignity. A true hotel should welcome every guest with respect, no matter how they appear." Some of the guests nodded slowly, realizing the truth in his words. A few even looked at the receptionist with disappointment, remembering her cruel laughter. The general manager tried to speak, his voice shaky. "Sir, I deeply apologize. We did not know." The owner raised his hand, stopping him. "You didn't need to know who I was," he said firmly. "That is the point. Respect should never depend on identity. It should be given freely." The room grew heavier with silence. The receptionist felt her eyes burn with shame. Tears threatened to fall, but she held them back, afraid of looking weak in front of everyone. Then, for the first time since his arrival, the owner turned directly toward her. His gaze was calm, but it pierced her soul. "You," he said softly. "Do you remember your words?" Her lips trembled. She could not speak. Her mind replayed the moments, her sarcasm, her mocking tone, the way she told him he didn't belong. Each memory stabbed her like a knife. The owner's voice grew firmer. "You said this hotel is not for people like me. You told me to go to a cheap motel. You laughed at me as if I were less than human. Tell me, was that your idea of hospitality?" Tears finally rolled down her cheeks. Her voice cracked as she whispered, I didn't know who you were." The owner nodded slowly. "Exactly. You didn't know. And that is why it matters. True respect is not given only to the powerful, it is given to everyone. Because everyone deserves dignity." The receptionist broke down, her hands shaking. "Please, forgive me. I was wrong. I made a mistake." The guests in the lobby watched closely. Some felt pity, others felt satisfaction, seeing her pride finally crushed. The staff exchanged nervous glances, knowing the owner's decision would change everything. The man stood in silence for a moment, his calm eyes never leaving hers. Then he spoke, his tone steady, almost gentle. Forgiveness is possible. But trust is not so easy to rebuild. You have one last chance. Either change your heart, or change your job. Gasps echoed through the lobby. The receptionist covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. She knew he was serious. The owner turned away, addressing everyone else. Let this be a lesson. Wealth is not always visible. Power is not always loud. Never judge someone by what you see. You may insult a king and not even know it. His words struck deep, not only in the staff but in the guests as well. Some lowered their heads in shame, realizing how often they too judged others by appearances. The general manager stepped forward again, bowing deeply. Sir, from this day forward, I promise, we will treat every guest with equal respect. The owner gave a small nod. Good. Because this hotel will not just be a place for luxury, it will be a place for dignity. The atmosphere in the lobby shifted. What had once been a hall of pride and arrogance now felt like a classroom where a powerful lesson had been taught. The receptionist stood quietly, tears still falling, her heart heavy with guilt. She had been exposed, not just in front of her colleagues but in front of the very guests she once tried to impress. The humiliation cut deep, but the truth cut deeper. And as the owner walked calmly toward the private elevator, followed by his assistants, one thought remained in everyone's mind. They would never forget the day the stranger revealed who he truly was. The truth had been exposed. And nothing would ever be the same again. The lobby was still buzzing after the shocking revelation. Guests whispered in corners, staff stood stiff with fear, and the receptionist sat frozen at her desk, her eyes swollen with tears. The truth was now clear to everyone. The stranger she had mocked was not just rich, not just powerful, but the very owner of the hotel. The owner returned after his private meeting with the managers. His steps were calm, steady, but his presence filled the room with quiet authority. The moment he appeared, silence fell across the lobby. Every head turned toward him. The receptionist's heart raced. She wanted to run, but her legs felt too heavy. She wanted to speak, but no words came. When he stopped in front of her desk, she lowered her eyes to the ground, too ashamed to look at him. For a moment, he simply stood there, watching her quietly. Then his voice, calm but firm, broke the silence. Respect, he said softly, is the simplest gift we can give another human being. It costs nothing, yet it means everything. The words struck her like arrows. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She whispered in a broken voice, I am sorry. I was wrong. I should not have treated you that way. The owner tilted his head slightly. Were you wrong because I am the owner? Or were you wrong because you denied respect to another human being? The question cut deeper than any insult. She sobbed harder, unable to answer. The guests nearby felt the weight of his words. Even those who had silently judged the stranger earlier now lowered their heads in shame. He continued, his voice steady but not cruel. Hospitality is not about money. It is about kindness. The true test of character is how we treat those we think cannot benefit us. The receptionist finally fell to her knees, her voice shaking. Please, give me another chance. I promise I will change. The owner looked at her for a long moment. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried both sadness and wisdom. Finally, he spoke. I am not here to destroy you. I am here to teach you. But remember, life rarely gives second chances. If I give you one, you must prove you deserve it. Her tears flowed freely as she nodded quickly. I will. I swear I will. The owner turned slightly, addressing not just her but the entire staff. Let this moment be a reminder for all of you. Titles, wealth, appearance, these things can fool the eye. But respect, dignity, and kindness must never depend on them. From today, this hotel will not only be known for luxury. It will be known for humanity. Applause broke out softly among some of the guests. Others simply nodded, deeply moved. Even the staff, who once carried arrogance in their faces, now felt a heavy lesson sink into their hearts. The receptionist slowly stood again, wiping her tears. She knew her pride had been broken, but in its place, something new had been planted, a chance to become better. For the first time, her smile was not fake, not forced, but humble. The owner gave one last look at her, then turned toward the elevator. His assistants followed, and as the doors closed, his final words echoed in the lobby. Respect costs nothing, but means everything. The elevator doors shut, leaving behind silence. For a long time, nobody moved. Then slowly, conversations returned, but this time, they were filled with reflection, not gossip. The guests spoke of the lesson they had witnessed, and the staff promised themselves never to repeat such arrogance. The receptionist remained at her desk, quiet and thoughtful. The shame she felt was heavy, but it was also the beginning of her change. She whispered to herself, "I will never judge anyone by their appearance again." Outside, the evening sun painted the sky in shades of gold. The stranger, the hidden millionaire, had come and gone, but the mark he left was unforgettable. This was not just the story of a man who revealed his wealth. It was the story of a simple truth, that dignity should be given to all, and respect should never depend on what the eye can see. And so, the story ended not with anger, not with punishment, but with an emotional reminder that would live in every heart present that day. Because sometimes, the richest lesson comes not from gold, but from kindness.